Hello, thanks for being in a new video. This time I have with me the Galaxy S24 in its basic edition, so let's give it a full review. Let's get started. I already reviewed the Galaxy S24 Ultra, I also reviewed the Galaxy S24 Plus, and the time has come to review the smaller sibling to see what Samsung can offer us in such a compact device. First, let me tell you about the price and availability, although this may vary depending on the different regions. In Mexico, its launch price has been 19,499 pesos for the 128GB edition. This is approximately $1,140, so it is quite an expensive device. Although you know that also the exchange rate can be changing, and of course the prices here are not the same as over there. The storage edition is also available at a price of 20,999 pesos, although Samsung also launched a promotion to purchase the double storage version at the price of the base edition, so you might get to take advantage of it. This is a device without a doubt that can be attractive, since despite being below the 20,000 Mexican pesos barrier, it is considered a high-end device, so it has a few competitors. What do you think if you join me to know it in more depth so we can see what Samsung can offer us? One of its strong points, of course, which will be availability, because it will be available in many stores, both physical and online, so its acquisition should not be very complicated. Now come with me to know it. One of the most attractive points of this device will be its compact size, as it really fits very well in the hand and is very comfortable in this sense, unlike most devices today that are too big. In this case, it is also going to offer us an excellent use of the front, as it has very thin bezels and also has a very modern look for that very reason. In this case, we still don't find the new Gorilla Armor protection that would give it not only more resistance but also less reflections. So it is still not something as advanced as what we see in the Ultra model, but definitely in aesthetics it is very nice. On the right side, we will find the on-off button as well as the volume buttons and some small bands to help the connectivity of the antennas. At the top are placed two microphones and another of these bands, and although the left side is completely clean, it serves to tell you that it has a thickness of 7.6 millimeters, so it is a device not only compact but also very thin. And finally, on the bottom we are going to find the tray where you can have nano SIM card. This may vary depending on the different regions. In Mexico, only the single SIM edition is distributed. Next, we will have a microphone, then the USB-C port, and finally the speaker with the new design, abandoning the grill. Being a compact and slim device, it is also a very light device weighing 167 grams. So for those who are looking for a device that is very comfortable, this will be an excellent choice. Although having a predominantly straight design, it is not as comfortable as other devices that have curved back cover, but either way it is very pleasant to hold in the hand. And with regards to resistance, on the back cover we will also find Gorilla Glass Victus 2, and it is also IP68 certified, so if you get to drop it in the water, you know it has a high chance of surviving. If you get to put this phone in the pool or the sea, remember to do it for short periods of time at a shallow depth, and above all rinse it after these activities, since neither Samsung nor any other brand makes you valid warranty for water damage. But another strong point of this device will be its variety of colors. I have the violet edition, but it is also available in amber yellow, onyx black, marble gray, and through the online sale there are exclusive colors like jade green, sapphire blue, and orange. So lots of variety of colors for you to choose the one you like, and definitely that is also a point to consider, because there are other devices that do not offer such a variety of colors and designs. Although remember, if you are going to put a protective case, the color of the cover will be the least of it. The screen is 6.2 inches, confirming how compact this device can be, but despite being a relatively small screen, it is actually a spectacular screen in terms of image quality. It can grant us overly vibrant colors thanks to its dynamic AMOLED 2X technology, and it also offers us a considerably good resolution, Full HD+, although this is obviously expected in such an expensive device. To be exact, it is a resolution of 2340 by 1080 pixels, and I repeat, the most remarkable thing about this screen will be the intensity of the colors and the intensity of the brightness. It really is a screen that reaches a very high brightness. Specifically, its maximum peak is 2600 nits when displaying HDR content. Although I must also say that in some scenarios, the screen could lower its brightness a little when the device becomes very hot. But definitely that the screen has very good sharpness, it also has very good viewing angles, so even viewing the content from some side we will still have a good eligibility and the colors will remain considerably true. And just as I told you that the maximum brightness is very high, you also have to consider that the minimum brightness allows you to work very comfortably at night or in very dark scenarios. It also offers us a refresh rate capable of reaching up to 120 Hz to show us very smooth movements and fluid animations when we are interacting with the entire system. And remember that Samsung also offers a feature called Vision Booster, through which when you are under the sunlight will modify some colors to try to improve the eligibility. In addition, also in this generation is incorporated for the first time the adaptive color tone mode in order to have a more natural white color to the white of the environment. This is a feature that I personally liked a lot, but also some people might be bothered by it because it might change the color rendering a bit. Speaking of which, it also features two display calibration modes, natural mode and vivid mode, although honestly there is not that much difference between these modes. It is likely that this device is going to receive an update soon to differentiate a bit more each of these modes that it has set for the color representation of this display. We can definitely say that the screen fulfills what we are paying for in this price range. Now let's go on to describe the sound that this device is capable of emitting with its two speakers. The bottom speaker will be the main speaker that has this new design, and the secondary speaker is in the earpiece area for calls. So it will be a less powerful speaker with less bass presence. The combination of the two results in a good sound, especially in terms of clarity. It is a speaker that sounds of very good quality, although obviously being such a compact device is not going to stand out for an exaggerated power, but the bass frequencies do come to distinguish. What do you think if you join me to listen to a small test, although remember that it is not the same to listen to it live? There is no doubt that it is a sound of very good quality for the clarity. It feels extremely clean, and with respect to the software also brings some improvements. For starters, we are going to find Dolby Atmos with various surround sound presets that you can use. We also have Dolby Atmos for gaming, and what I like the most is that you have access to a 9-band equalizer available without the need to have headphones connected, unlike other devices. So it gives us good quality and also has some other options to adapt the sound depending on how you listen to it. Something I also like to point out about the Galaxy devices is the standalone app sound feature, so you can play some content locally and other apps send it to your Bluetooth speakers. So if you're at a party, you can be listening to music on your speakers, but be watching some other video on your device without affecting the music playback. As you saw, it doesn't have a headphone jack, so to use wired headphones, you need a USB-C adapter. In case you need to use wireless headphones, remember that it does support the aptX codec as one of the advanced codecs, but unfortunately in this case it does not support the LDAC or LHDC codec. So in this sense, it may disappoint if you have wireless high-resolution headphones. You probably won't be able to take full advantage of them on this device. The best experience in this case is reserved by Samsung for their Galaxy Buds with the proprietary SSC codec, so in a way they force you to buy their own headphones if you want to enjoy the best experience. Although the aptX codec can hold its own a bit well in sound quality and resolution, but there are other devices on the Android market that do support higher resolution codecs for connecting other headphones to it. Below we are going to listen to a test recorded with these microphones, which total 3 in total. Unlike the Ultra model, in this case we do not find any microphone on the camera module side for directional audio pickup, so we are going to listen in a considerably quiet environment. Esta es una prueba de audio grabada con los micrófonos del Galaxy S24 en su edición básica en la edición de color violeta. Next, we are going to listen to another test recorded with these microphones, but now to a sound system at maximum volume in order to observe if the audio captured with these microphones becomes distorted in these very high volume scenarios.
Always come back to you, you move me in a way never thought anyone could. You get me high, your vibe drop when I'm feeling blue. Yeah, it's all you, 'cause you're the one. Yeah, the one. You touch me in a way that makes me shiver. Sometimes I can't believe that you are mine. Love's a gun and baby, you're my trigger. You kiss me in a way that gives me high. You make all my dreams come true. It feels right, just being around you. We could break up and then make up. I always
Low. Definitely that of this model are of high quality. The front camera is 12 megapixels with f2.2 aperture and autofocus, which is very positive, although the resolution and aperture still feel a bit basic, especially since there is no real evolution compared to past generations. For this reason, I feel that Samsung should already improve this section, although the experience will still be just as good, especially with respect to the software. You have a quick launch by pressing the power button twice. Of course, you can also switch between the cameras by doing this same gesture or also by swiping with your finger. So, it's very handy. In addition, it has a good capture speed. In fact, if you slide down this shutter, you can access a burst even on the front camera to capture the exact moment. It's up to 100 pictures, and also remember that we have 2 levels of amplitude, plus you can use the palm of your hand to enable the shutter without the need to touch the screen. So it can give you a pretty comfortable experience. Even in the settings, it makes it clear to us that you could also say capture with voice commands to be able to perform this action, or also enable the floating button. Let's give it a try. Capture, capture, smile, capture. Well, it seems that the voice command works a bit slow, but the floating shutter can be very handy and very comfortable. In the upper right corner, you can enable some color filters that you can preview in real time and modify their intensity. You can also access a facial beauty setting so that you can improve the softness, skin tone, jaw, and eye size. So you have very good parameters, and finally you can select between 2 color settings, whether you like the natural setting or the warm setting. But even though this front camera doesn't represent a major evolution over the last generation, it still maintains excellent quality. It's a very good camera in very bright conditions, maintains a very good level of detail and good color rendering. Obviously, having autofocus allows for an excellent level of detail both when you are very close to the camera and when you are far away. So in group shots, everyone will also appear well focused, although it is not characterized by being a very wide lens, unlike other devices. In indoor scenes where there is much less illumination, obviously the level of detail drops. The camera is not as spectacular in these types of conditions, as it also appears a bit more grainy in darker areas, although fortunately it still maintains good color saturation. In backlight, the preview still doesn't look optimized, and this is something that should improve with an update, but after taking the picture, it does balance highlights and shadows well, although it seems to me that in this type of setting the color loses accuracy, giving slightly more odd colors, and there are still some slightly overexposed areas, so it is not the best exponent in this type of photography, although it does a good job. At night, the result will be positive if you have a good light source nearby. I think it still maintains a good level of detail, and there is a bit of graininess in the darker areas, but nothing really serious. Although, as with the other cameras, if it's at night and there are any areas of strong lighting, it will come out pretty burnt. In that sense, Samsung should still improve its processing. In backlit night shots, when you do not have any lighting in front of you, the result is very positive. It manages to get a good level of detail and well defined, plus it manages to avoid the appearance of noise in the darkest areas. And for even more difficult photos, you could use the screen as a flash simulation to illuminate your face well, and I think the result is also positive. I find portrait photography very nice at night, especially because it generates a rather nice bokeh effect in some areas of the background. And in the daytime, it is one of the few front cameras that is able to keep the foreground objects in focus. So I find the portrait photography of the front camera spectacular, one of its strongest points, having not only good detection but also a nice bokeh effect, and it also performs well in areas of complicated lighting and shadows. So this is one of its strongest points. On the back, we find a simple photographic system. We have the ultra-wide camera of 13mm with 12 megapixels in its sensor and f2.2 aperture with fixed focus. That is something that honestly does not please because it is an expensive device, so we would like to see a higher resolution sensor or autofocus. On the other hand, the main camera does offer us a high-resolution sensor with 50 megapixels. We are talking about a 23mm lens with f1.8 aperture, optical stabilization and autofocus. The main camera does not disappoint, and through this high-resolution camera is also going to offer us a kind of virtual 50mm camera with 2x digital zoom that maintains optical quality by cropping the sensor. So it offers us 12 megapixel pictures and has the same specifications in its lens. And finally, we have the telephoto camera, in this case with 70mm approximately. That is 3x optical zoom. We have 10 megapixels on the sensor, f2.4 aperture, autofocus, and optical stabilization. Again, not a disappointing camera as such, but if you notice, it's pretty much the same camera we've had for several generations, so you don't see a real improvement here. We wish Samsung would put higher resolution sensors in the secondary cameras or improve the aperture, but it looks like Samsung is still very comfortable. Next, let's test the capture speed by trying to take a capture of number 3. I'll make 2 attempts to be absolutely sure I'm doing a good test of this style to verify the speed. As you can see, the first time I was very close to the exact moment, the second time I was even a little ahead, so I feel that the capture speed is very accurate when I press the button. I must say that this device already received its first update before I did this review, so I think it has improved a lot. And remember that we can also slide down the shutter to take a burst of up to 100 pictures. The burst also starts its capture with very good speed, so I think it is very easy to capture the exact moment with this device. In the upper right corner, we will find the settings button that will give us access to the same filters that we saw on the front camera. It just doesn't give us access to change the tone of the photo to have a warmer tone. I would have liked to see that setting here on the rear camera as well. From the main interface, we can adjust some things manually, simply focus and exposure. But if we want a much more advanced setting, we can head towards the Pro mode. In this case, we can regulate the ISO up to 3200 or also the shutter speed with a capture of up to 30 seconds. So, it offers us good settings. In fact, in the upper right corner, we can also access to configure things like contrast, highlights, shadows, saturation, and tint. But if you like to modify all this after taking your picture, you should know that by default it comes to capture photos in JPG. But in the settings, you can choose that in Pro mode it takes pictures in RAW or also in combined format. So yes, you could get to have a more advanced photography, but for the more advanced you could download the Expert RAW application, which is the one that Samsung includes in some Galaxy devices. It can be downloaded directly from the Galaxy Store, and this app will greatly enhance your photography experience. For example, through this app, you could actually take pictures at 24 megapixels, and again, it gives you all sorts of manual adjustments, including some filters that you could put in, like to blur the lighting a little bit or take pictures of the stars and advanced things. So for the more advanced photographers, this app I think can meet a lot of your needs. And with respect to the smart capture, it's going to automatically detect when you have a document on the screen, and notice how you can do the immediate scanning of it. Although in this case it is a normal photograph, and manufacturers like Xiaomi or some others already start to offer optimizers to make the photo look like a scan with different color styles. But in this case, Samsung is limited only to crop the sheet, which is not bad, but definitely can already improve. Remember that from here you could also select the share button to send to a physical printer as a PDF. QR codes can also be scanned in a very simple way, so the operation is good in the main interface of the camera. As I was telling you, the main camera is the only one with a high resolution sensor, and it does feel very good quality as you can zoom in and crop your picture while still maintaining a very good level of detail. But here what I don't like is that only the main camera has a high resolution sensor, unlike many other competitors on the Android side, which integrate high resolution sensors in the rest of the cameras as well. Motion pictures come out perfectly well defined with both the main camera and the ultra-wide camera, and even with the telephoto camera as well. So these kinds of action scenes I think come out well as long as you have good lighting. In auto mode, the pictures will be 12 megapixels, so we don't have that much detail, although I told you that using Expert RAW you could have higher resolution pictures, but it's a standard level of detail. The pictures in general come out well. I like that they keep a good color representation consistent between the three lenses. You don't feel that one camera changes colors drastically, and in all cases you see considerably good color rendering. The telephoto camera may struggle a bit more in darker areas, but overall it performs well. Here you're looking at the 10x digital zoom, which still maintains a good quality, and the maximum it can reach is 30x, although it already becomes a little more artificial, but I think it also maintains a good zoom experience. Especially if you compare it with the iPhone 15, this device will have a totally superior zoom, although if you compare it with other Android possibly falls a little below. Indoors again, we will see consistent performance between the three lenses, having a very similar color rendition between all of them. The main camera will be the one with the best performance, especially in darker areas where not so much noise appears, although a little grainy, but really nothing serious, and also maintains a good color saturation. The ultra-wide camera presents a little less level of detail because it is a lower resolution sensor, but it behaves just as well as the main camera, and the telephoto camera also has a good performance. In backlit scenes, notice that the preview is much more advanced than in past generations. This is a very important improvement as most Android devices are not able to give you this preview before taking the picture, so it looks perfect, and after taking the picture it balances the highlight and shadow areas even better, so areas that still looked a bit overexposed in the preview look much better in this case. Maybe the shadow area, I wish it was a bit more adequate in the black color rendering, but honestly it is a very good picture of excellent quality considering the difficulty it was to have this kind of light conditions. The ultra-wide camera also behaves of good quality in this type of backlit scenarios, and curiously in this case it reveals a little more chromatic aberration in some areas, so the lens is not of the highest quality, although in scenes with good lighting it is not so noticeable, but in this type of scenes it reveals a little more this type of chromatic aberration. What I like is that the telephoto lens maintains excellent performance also in this type of backlit conditions, unlike other devices that have lousy performance in this type of conditions. The truth is that it makes this result look very easy, but believe me, it was a very complicated photograph because I was in the shade and the back area was very brightly lit. At night, again Samsung makes the mistake of not balancing lights and shadows well. Unlike other even cheaper devices, I think this device does not perform up to what one would expect. It's not bad photography, but in the year of the year I think we can get a lot more picky about this type of photography. The ultra-wide camera, again, has this same problem at night, plus it has a lot more noise present in the darker areas. And the telephoto camera, again, we see that it is not able to make a good balance between darker and brighter areas in this type of night conditions. If we use the night mode, we simply see an improvement with respect to noise management, but we still don't see a 100% balanced photograph. In the ultra-wide camera, again with the night mode, we will notice a small improvement, but there is still quite a lot of noise in the scene. And with the telephoto camera, we won't see a significant improvement using night mode either. So from my point of view, the night mode should be improved with an upgrade. In darker areas without a light source such as a bright sign or lamp, the result is super nice. Honestly, I really like how it manages to recover so much detail and has a very good color accuracy. It also keeps the dark areas very well dark without any noise present, and the same goes for the main camera. We notice an excellent level of detail, good rendering of the dark areas and good color rendering, and with the zoom camera notice that in this case where it's very dark scenes it's not going to be used, so it's going to be 100% digital zoom. With night mode, honestly, there's not that much improvement in this type of photography. So the night mode seems a little bit useless to me at times. Where you might get to take advantage of night mode would be in these types of scenes that are practically in total darkness. Notice how the preview appears to be completely dark. And this would be the result with the automatic mode. As you notice, it's quite remarkable that so much information comes out even though the color rendering is very purple. But notice how using the night mode, the color rendering is much more accurate and in fact the level of detail is raised as well. So the night mode only seems to me to be useful in these kinds of scenarios with a lot of darkness. This would be the result with the ultra wide camera and this with the telephoto camera, although it is actually digital zoom. And with the night mode, it gets a little better in both cases. So I insist that this mode is very focused on ultra dark scenes. Regarding macro photography, although the device can adjust its focus to close objects, it can't be that close because otherwise it will come out a bit out of focus or very uneven. Ideally, it will be ideal to apply a bit of zoom to do this type of photography, and I find the result to be positive. So while it doesn't have a special camera for macro shots, I think the main camera can do a good job. The bad thing in this case is that the ultra-wide camera doesn't have autofocus, unlike other devices that could give you superior photo quality. And by the way, if the ultra-wide camera you consider that it doesn't give you enough wide, or you consider that it has a bit of distortions that you don't like very much, you can use panoramic photography and you have very good space. In addition, it's also compatible with the ultra-wide camera, so you gain a lot of amplitude in this type of scenario without losing definition. So panoramic photography seems to me also perfectly well implemented in this Samsung device. And finally, portrait photography is extremely tricky in this type of backlit scenarios, but Samsung has solved it in a good way with the 1x lens, although the color doesn't seem as accurate or as nice to me. I feel the colors are a bit saturated, but it detected the foreground well enough to blur the background. The bad thing is that when you apply the 2x zoom in this type of setting, it was completely impossible to take a good portrait picture because it always focused on the highlights area. With the 3x zoom setting, without a doubt, it improves a lot, having an almost perfect detection of the foreground, focusing well on each of these elements and blurring the background. So portraits are best taken with the 3x lens. Hopefully with an update, they will solve the problem with 2x. Note that if we have a little more light in front of us with the 2x zoom setting, it is able to take a good picture blurring the background well. For video recording, one positive thing is that the 4K resolution at 60 frames per second is supported by absolutely all cameras, including the front camera. So in this respect, it gives you very advanced capabilities that are not usually offered by other manufacturers. Although if you start recording in that mode, you're not going to be able to switch between cameras, but that happens even on the iPhone. So if you want to maintain the ability to switch between all these lenses, you have to record in 4K at 30 frames per second. As you notice, we have these quick shortcuts to move between zooming, or we can also smoothly swipe between all the cameras. We're also going to be able to pause and resume our content, and we can also take pictures while we're recording some video. We can also turn on the flashlight while we are recording, although it is not compatible at the same time with the ultra-wide camera, probably to avoid some unwanted reflections. Another thing we can also do while we are recording is to rotate to the front camera to appear in this same video recording, and that is something that several devices are not able to do. That's why I always like to highlight it on Galaxy devices as a strong point. In fact, the main camera can also record up to 8K in resolution, but it's only that main camera. And just like in photography, we can tap on the screen to adjust the focus or exposure, and we can lock this setting so that it's no longer moving at any time. Or we can also access the professional video mode, in which we're going to have all kinds of parameters, including an audio monitor and a histogram. And notice that in this case, we could also select which microphone we want to use, either one of the ones built into the device, or also connect an external microphone via USB or via Bluetooth. This device does have the ability to record video in 8K, so you could even zoom in on some things and still notice a good level of detail. Although it doesn't seem to go at an ultra high bit rate, but that's par for the course for this type of video recording. The truth is that you're not going to be recording very commonly in 8K, but if you want to extract stills from your video, it might come in handy. The recommended recording will be in 4K at 30 frames per second, which does support even switching between all lenses. So the ultra-wide camera performs well, albeit with colors a bit more saturated than I'd like. The main camera I think has slightly more accurate colors when recording video, and the telephoto camera has pretty much the same color rendering. In fact, it seems to me to maintain a good consistency between the three lenses. Only the ultra-wide camera seemed to have a little more color than I would have liked. In video recording, the maximum zoom will be 12x, which I think is totally fine. So I think the video recording is good. In indoor scenes, we notice that the ultra-wide lens again gives us a little bit warmer shot with colors a little bit different than the other cameras, but it performs quite well recording even in these conditions where there's not so much light. Just at the moment of transitioning from one lens to the other, you get to notice more noise than you would like, but overall I think it does have a good quality, even in these slightly darker scenes. And in the backlit recording, we're also going to notice a good performance. Notice that this scene was super complex because of the amount of light in the back, and yet it still achieves a very good balance of light and shadow. There are no aggressive jumps when detecting or not detecting the face, and also with the ultra-wide camera maintains a good performance recording in these conditions. If we zoom in for the telephoto camera, it again maintains excellent performance, so I find this to be most positive. The backlight experience between its three lenses is totally consistent, giving an excellent experience. And at night we will notice something similar to what we saw indoors, that is, it maintains good color saturation, good detail, but there is more noise present, and of course when switching between each of the lenses, this noise will be much more noticeable. So when zooming in is when you get to resent it. And also in lighting changes. I think it is not an expert device to record in this type of extremely dark conditions, but it manages to defend itself well. The telephoto camera is the one that will have less light input, so it is not recommended to use it at night or in very dark scenes because you will get to notice a much paler color. The main camera does a good job, but again seems to have a bit of trouble eliminating noise in darker areas. So the result only seems acceptable to me, but I think Samsung should improve and could do so if it integrated more modern sensors in its cameras, but so far it is overconfident, so let's get picky here, and it seems to have disappointed a bit with little evolution in this section. The stabilization is a very positive point, since with any of the lenses you will have a shot with good stabilization. If you're walking, it looks pretty good. Even if you're running, it stabilizes well with the ultra-wide camera. Obviously, with the telephoto camera, it is not so advisable to go running because it will not have such an attractive performance. But I insist that both with the ultra-wide camera and with the main camera and with the telephoto camera, we will have an excellent stabilization performance. Especially if you go walking, I think it manages to disguise the result perfectly well, and of course it also has the super stable mode that you can use with both the ultra-wide camera and the main camera. The only thing missing would be to let us use the super stable mode on the telephoto camera, but the truth is that the result is good. As for the focus, this camera has an excellent performance because even if I walk by very fast, it is able to focus me with great speed and accuracy. In fact, also as you notice, if I go backwards and forwards, the focus remains very accurate. So in this sense, it does give you an experience that you would expect from such an expensive device. By the way, it also has a portrait video recording mode blurring the background. The detection of the foreground seems good to me, although at times there are some areas that do not get to detect them quite right, but what I like is that it maintains the quality in this type of video, while most Android manufacturers record it in full HD. In addition, if you decrease the intensity of the blur when you move away and increases when you approach to give a fairly natural effect, and in this case you will also notice that sometimes if you get to keep focused on objects, although here the result may vary, there are times when it does, times when it doesn't, but for the most part it performs considerably well. I think it offers very good quality portrait video recording, which even allows you to record using the 2x setting to give a scene more akin to what you would find with a professional lens. Although again, the detection can get a bit glitchy if there is a lot more movement, but the result can be positive if you don't move around too much. Samsung will also offer a fast camera mode on this device. It can go from 5 to 60x, so it's suitable for people but not so good for landscapes. The good thing is that it is in 4K and maintains a good bit rate per second to have good quality at any time. It also gives us two slow motion modes. One of them is in 4K at 120 frames per second, something very few can boast these days. So this device has great capabilities in 4K slow motion. On the other hand, it can be slower in Full HD at 240 frames per second, also giving a good result. But here what should be noted is that Samsung no longer incorporates the super slow motion mode that reached 960 frames per second that we had seen in past generations. So while it improves in resolution, it gets worse in slowness. The front camera will maintain good quality as well, mostly because of the autofocus, so you have an excellent level of detail and you maintain good stabilization without the scene being cropped too much. Still, it's not as wide a camera as we've seen on other devices, but I insist, having autofocus makes it easier for content creators to show something while they're recording, and this object is indeed going to be in focus, unlike many other devices. So the quality of the recording with the front camera seems very good to me. We have very natural colors, although against the light it could struggle a little more than we would like, since overexposed areas will appear in the highlights, so it is not so capable in this regard. But it seems to me that it is a good camera, but it should be improved, especially since the last generation is practically the same. Indoors, we will also notice that the color rendering can become a little cooler than we would like, plus the darker areas will appear with much more noise and less definition. So it is not a camera that has such an amazing light input, and being a simple sensor, it does not offer us a good treatment in noise either. At night, this is confirmed because even having a direct light source, we see that the movements feel a little less defined than I would like. In fact, the recording is at 27 frames per second, so the truth is that the movements will feel a little strange even if you have the lights on, but if you go to darker areas where we could demand only the most expensive devices, you will notice that this does not get to recover much illumination. In fact, there is a bit more noise present, although I think the noise works very well, but you do see an image with very little illumination, and it is something that we could demand to improve a device this expensive. This front camera also offers us the fast camera mode with stabilization and an excellent level of detail as it is in 4K. It also offers slow motion recording mode, although it is a basic slow motion but functional for a large majority of users. It will also offer us the portrait recording mode, blurring the background, and it seems to me that in this case even becomes a higher quality than what we saw in the rear camera. Fortunately, it maintains the recording in 4K, has good stabilization, although the objects do not get to keep them in focus as if we saw it in the photograph. So, there's still a little bit of room for improvement, but within the market, I think it's one of the best devices in recording with this mode because it actually allows you to modify its intensity, and you can also adjust some other effects, some more aggressive, or you could also put black and white on the background and keep you in color or put a glitch effect. So it gives you several creative tools so you can choose what you like the most. And finally, it also integrates the dual recording mode so you can show the front camera and the rear camera at the same time. It's actually quite good because it allows you to move that frame wherever you want, although you can't change and adjust its size. But what I don't like is that you can't switch between the cameras. So if you want to focus on something up close, you have to stop the video and start it again now with the main camera so that the focus is enabled, but you can't zoom. So again, you have to stop the video and start it again if you want to use the telephoto camera. But even if you are still in the telephoto camera, it doesn't let you zoom in. So you are a bit limited in the zoom, and also in this case, unlike the Ultra model, you can't record in 4K using this mode, but stay in Full HD. So this could also be improved with an update that hopefully they will send out. In fact, you could also record with split screen and not only in picture mode. You can switch them around, but again, you can't switch between lenses to change the zoom, so I think there are several things to improve. In the software, we will not have surprises, all positive from Samsung as it comes with Android 14 and also One UI 6.1 factory. That is, in both cases, we see the latest software, both Samsung and Google. So the device will have a very good experience and will also have excellent support as Samsung offers 7 years of software updates, including security patches. So, definitely that this device is not going to be outweighed over time, but it is going to have excellent support. And with respect to the added features, it seems to me that we've already seen quite a bit of the software in Galaxy S24 Ultra and Galaxy S24 Plus. So it's exactly the same thing. Let's try to go a little bit faster. For example, in wallpapers, we are going to offer us the possibility of generative backgrounds. That is, through text, you can generate some other image. Simply choose a category, change some terms, and finally the device generates a wallpaper for you. Obviously, it gives you some options for you to select them, and you can set them as lock screen background or for the home screen. Another thing that has changed has been the always on display mode, which now allows you to keep the screen always on, but practically in its entirety, since as you will notice, it simply gets darker but retains the wallpaper. This could help you to always remember your favorite person you set as your wallpaper, but obviously it will also consume a lot more power. Fortunately, Samsung brings the option for you as the user to choose how you want it to work. If automatically, always, or only displayed when you press, or at a specific time, or only when you receive new notifications. So, Samsung gives the user quite a bit of freedom to decide how they want it to behave, but it's definitely a bit strange how it works. In fact, we will also notice that the lock screen is editable. So here we can select which image we want to appear on this always on cover. In fact, something that you may also notice is that you can have several images selected so that the images change at certain times. Of course, you can also choose a filter to change the style of that picture, but when you choose only one picture, it does enable the option of a special frame that you can select. And something curious is that sometimes it also detects the depth, so that the face can come out of the frame while the background stays inside. So, it can give you some small touch of customization for your device, but I think in this regard the iPhone and some other manufacturers are giving a little more customization for the lock screen. Although in this case they have also already added widgets that you can have to quickly display on this screen, so it gives you good options, but the customization still seems slightly short to me. Remember that edge panels are still present, which is this sidebar that allows you to have various tools, so it can become very useful and you can select which panels you want to display, and even if you want to download additional panels to quickly have on hand some tools that you could get to use. From this panel, you could also open applications in a floating mode by simply dragging that window to the center. And this small floating window, you can resize it, you can also minimize it, and you can open multiple apps in this floating window format. So remember that Samsung offers the most complete experience in this regard, because even through the lab section, you can force all apps to work in this format. So it allows you to do many things at the same time. Unlike the iPhone where you only have one task at a time, or also unlike other Android devices that do not allow you to open so many applications in this floating format at the same time. In the advanced features section, we will also find the advanced intelligence feature, which is all about Galaxy AI. For example, the translation of calls, the keyboard that allows you to write in different styles some paragraph that you have selected, or also check your spelling, the translator that works without the need for internet connection within Samsung Notes. Remember that you can reformat your notes or summarize them quickly. In the voice recorder, it will also offer you this section to summarize a very long recording, even with different people speaking, and it can give you the main points of everything you recorded, so it can be quite useful for summarizing various things. In fact, it is also able to summarize an internet page or translate it, and finally, the image editor is perhaps where this Galaxy AI feature gets the most attention. Let's turn on this option so that we can enjoy it. And notice how when we enter the gallery editing, we can press this artificial intelligence button, and now I'm going to simply select this person. And notice how by holding down, I can select whether I want to reposition it or also move it, resize it. So I'm going to move it to this part, and now I'm going to press the generate button so that the device automatically fills in that area that's left empty. And obviously this is one of the most attractive points of the photo editor in Galaxy today. As you realize, it takes a few seconds, so it's not an instant edit, but definitely that the result is quite advanced. Notice the difference. You definitely don't even see that it's an artificial photograph. The photos you edit this way, notice how they will remain with a watermark to indicate that they were edited with Galaxy AI. And also in the metadata it will appear that it is modified with generative editing, but I think it would be pretty easy to circumvent this kind of markings, so it also has some risks to have these photo editing capabilities. Remember that Bixby, Samsung's voice assistant, is also present, so you simply hold down on the button to be able to access this assistant. Although curiously in this case it came in English, but either way you can configure it in Spanish. You have two voices to select from, and while Bixby is not too good at querying information, it is very good at controlling the device. So you could ask it to take a selfie, set a timer, set reminders and more. And in the advanced features, note that we can also access the Samsung Labs experimental features to force multi-window to work for all apps, or also force dark mode within some specific apps even if the system is in light mode. Another advanced thing in Samsung is the modes and routines section, where you can automate various things. You can simply select what you want to happen when you enter one of the specific modes. It can be a mode that you're exercising or driving. And all of this is even synchronized with Samsung watches or bracelets as well for an even more advanced experience. But if you want to be even more specific, you can create routines with all kinds of automations. You simply choose a trigger condition for that function, which can even be a manual activation. But in this case, I'm going to select, for example, a specific time of day. I'm going to select that at 3:40, my device does various things. So I could automatically switch modes, select it to change sound, display settings, battery settings, and absolutely anything you can imagine. So it definitely gives you very good automation options to save a lot of time. And remember that in this case, you can hold down on some video to turn it into a slow motion mode, and when you release the video, resumes at normal speed. So it can serve you simply as a curious detail to visualize something specific in that video. Although if you want to keep it in slow motion, you have to edit it afterwards. But through artificial intelligence, it's gonna try to generate that kind of slow motion that you don't notice, that it wasn't originally recorded in slow motion. And speaking of the gallery and videos, remember that you can hold down on some text on this side and select it likewise in the videos, or you can also extract people quickly by holding down on them, and you can copy them or also save them as a sticker. Although I have already said it on multiple occasions, WhatsApp needs to be updated so that the stickers work, because it sends it as a simple image. But look at how Telegram does send it as a sticker. So, I think WhatsApp should improve in that sense, but Samsung does have several tools to make things easier when working with images. And finally, remember that it also has Samsung Members, where you can take advantage of various discount coupons that Samsung offers simply for having a Galaxy. So on a daily basis, you could log into this app to see discounts on online stores, on stores like restaurants, on other services. So we really have a very good catalog for multiple discounts. And remember that the system is very well optimized as well to take advantage of the X-axis optical engine, so when you press the buttons you'll feel some small bump. When entering selection sliders like this style, you will also feel a little tapping in your hand, so the quality of the operating system actually feels very nice to me. Let's go to security. And the same thing happens that we have already seen in other Galaxy S series devices. That is, we have a maximum registration of 4 fingerprints, while in competitors we see a registration of 5 fingerprints. So it remains as a disadvantage, this section. Although compared against the iPhone, it is obviously an advantage because the iPhone does not have a fingerprint reader. But the facial recognition offered by Samsung is a fairly simple unlocking, only in 2 dimensions, unlike the lock that the iPhone has, which is much more advanced. However, Samsung does offer extended unlock, which allows you to select trusted environments in which the device will stay unlocked and will not be showing the lock screen. So it can also give you a lot of convenience. It also offers Samsung Pass to manage passwords or confidential information that we want to insert from the keyboard, all protected with your fingerprint. If you want to know this in more detail, you can see the review of his older brothers, as it also has the secure folder to safeguard files or applications. Secure Wi-Fi, which allows you to have a private VPN from Samsung to connect to public Wi-Fi networks. In fact, it also has Samsung Kids, a bit hidden in this part since you have to add it to the list of quick settings. But note how this Samsung Kids mode will allow you to safely lend your device to a little one, because it will only be able to run what you authorize. Samsung offers some default applications and even recommendations to download, all approved by Samsung. But you as a user can disable the recommendations, and you can disable any recommendations from Samsung and only give it permission to access a certain game or app. Obviously, to exit, you will have to verify through the fingerprint. Remember that in the device care section, Samsung also includes a partnership with McAfee. In case you are more concerned about malware or similar things, you could activate this protection, although it is disabled by default. And if you happen to lose your phone, remember that you also have good features from Samsung. Within the security section, remember to enable the protection of your lost device, as some things sometimes come turned off, but it is important that you turn all this on so you have more chances of finding your device in case it gets lost. And in this case, it stands out because Samsung is one of the Android manufacturers that does offer its own implementation to find your lost device, unlike the vast majority of Android manufacturers that are limited to Google's own implementation, which is much simpler. And finally, remember that in the digital well-being section, you can also take a look at the time consumption you are having on each app, set yourself limits, and control your children's devices. And finally, you can press the power button 5 times to access the emergency call mode. In battery will have a very similar performance to what we see in several high-end devices. That is to say, if you put to demand the maximum with extremely heavy applications, the device will be exhausted easily because the processor is extremely powerful, capable of doing a lot of calculations in a short time. So in my case, you know that I usually run a battery drainer, and in this case it reached 3 hours and 24 minutes with a continuous execution of this drainer. Compared to other devices, the battery definitely lags a little bit, but that's the price to pay for having such a compact and small device. However, having this drainer running in the background while playing some video, the device actually performs quite well, so I think Samsung has a good power management, as it got up to 7 hours and 18 minutes in that kind of use. So if you're not a user that's going to be running extremely complex applications, I think the battery life will be very positive. Also remember that you could set a power saving mode for day-to-day use in case you want to extend this life a little bit more. Or also in some emergency, if you're low on battery, you could enable this option and turn on the saver mode so that a super saver mode is enabled where a lot of things are restricted, but it still allows you to add 4 additional apps. Obviously, this is more focused on some emergency occasion, but overall, I think the battery, I insist, is good. Unless you want to be playing all day, because in that case the battery is not going to perform as well. Regarding the charger, we already know that Samsung does not include it in the box, and that is something that bothers a lot. It's compatible with the 25-watt charger, so it doesn't offer exaggeratedly fast charging either. If you are going to buy it separately, also remember that, in addition to the original charger, you could buy a charger compatible with the power delivery standard, so you can save a little and still enjoy a 100% safe charging. Using this charger, with 15 minutes, I got 27% of the power back on this mobile device. With 30 minutes of charging, it reached 55%, and the full charge finished in 79 minutes. So, I insist, it's not that fast a charge even in this case that the battery is small. Definitely that other Android manufacturers are going to give you a completely superior charge with larger batteries as well. So definitely neither charging nor battery will be a strong point of this device. The good news is that it also supports wireless charging, so if you have some base on your desk or where you work, you can perfectly put it to charge with a lot of comfort, and it also has reversible wireless charging, so you could put to charge on the back of this device some headphones, your watch, or also another device compatible with wireless charging, although it is a much slower charge, but for emergencies it can serve. And to ensure that the battery will have a good battery life, Samsung in this generation has included good battery protection options, so you have 3 different levels for you to choose how much you want to take care of the battery. Obviously, the more you take care of the battery, the more limited your experience will be because it will charge only up to 80%. But the advantage is that you as a user will be able to decide how you want it to behave to protect it. In connectivity, we find practically everything we could ask for, supporting 5G networks even with an option to block mobile data for certain applications. So you can perfectly set which applications will connect to the internet using Wi-Fi only, or which applications can connect to the internet using both. In addition, it also supports eSIM as it should be on a high-end device. Simply in the SIM Manager section, you are going to be able to add via a QR code another mobile data service. And this, as I have already mentioned in other videos, is very useful when you go traveling since you do not need to purchase a physical SIM, but simply through the internet you can acquire an eSIM, and by scanning a QR you will already have that service. It also has Wi-Fi 6, so it gives you good download speeds. Obviously, this can vary a lot depending on your internet provider and also your own router, but it definitely does support very good speeds. It also has Bluetooth 5.3, offering good stability, and it has NFC, so using the back of your device, you can make mobile payments. In some regions, it supports Samsung Pay. It would also support Google Pay, or also compatible banking apps could use this chip so you can make payments very easily. It does not have FM radio like virtually all high-end. And regarding screen projection, you can use Smart View, which is a pretty advanced projection that even allows you to only project certain apps so that you can continue using your cell phone while doing a screen projection. You can also hide notifications in the projection or turn off your cell phone screen while you are doing that projection. On the other hand, also remember that it has Samsung DeX, so you can do this wireless screen projection, but in a desktop format. That is, applications are displayed as windows similar to a computer interface, and you can connect a wireless keyboard and mouse to your cell phone for a much more productive experience. In fact, you could also project the screen onto your phone, although in that case it's simply a mirrored projection. Let's just say it doesn't have Smart View in this format, but it does have Samsung DeX. In addition to that, you can connect to your vehicle via Android Auto, both wired and wireless. And the connector is USB 3.2, so it gives you a very good connection speed. And it also includes Windows connectivity, so you can easily connect it to your laptop, even if it's not a Galaxy Book. So it definitely brings very good options in everything that has to do with connectivity. In the sensors, we will also find a large number of all kinds of sensors. The only detail in this case is that we will find a proximity sensor that looks more like a contact sensor because it is not enabled by being close but by being completely in contact. So the proximity sensor, the truth is that it is not going to give you a very satisfactory experience. It seems to be one of these virtual sensors in order to be able to have a very thin frame, but it's definitely something that's unpleasant to see in such an expensive device. The rest of the sensors are actually pretty good. We have everything we need, including a pressure sensor and also the geomagnetic field sensor that might be absent in other devices. Let's talk about ecosystem, and for that you already know that Samsung is one of the strongest, as it not only has a good catalog of tablets, watches, Galaxy Buds and other accessories that you can connect, but also Samsung has its TVs fully compatible with its cell phones through Smart View. You can also connect their refrigerators and many other accessories through the SmartThings app. So really the ecosystem experience is too advanced in Samsung, because in fact SmartThings is compatible with other accessories from other brands, not necessarily from Samsung. So it can give you a pretty advanced experience in controlling all your home devices. In addition, Samsung integrates other ecosystem technologies, for example, Quick Share, to send files with other devices, not only Samsung but also with Windows computers or other Android devices. It also has the option to answer your calls from other devices. For example, if you have a Galaxy Tab, you could also answer your calls from that device. It also has the option for your Galaxy Buds to be connected to multiple devices and switch automatically. In fact, you can also connect a couple of Galaxy Buds to the same cell phone, or you can also continue your applications on another device, in this case restricted to Samsung Notes and Samsung Internet. So you could use several things, including sharing your cell phone camera with your tablet to use it for video calls, and the multi-control technology to share your cursor between several devices, although you know that in Mexico the Galaxy Book is not distributed, and that will be my main complaint. The rest of Samsung's ecosystem things and technologies are super advanced, but personally it bothers me a lot not to have the Galaxy Book for sale in Mexico. Regarding cloud storage, remember that Samsung Gallery is seamlessly integrated with OneDrive, so you can connect your account to have your automatic backup. Let's talk about performance as we go through the app opening test. This device has the Exynos 2400 processor, a processor made by Samsung, so it's generally a controversial processor. But it seems to me that in this generation they've reached a good maturity in the processor. At least notice that in opening applications it behaves considerably faster. In this case, it took 1.8 seconds on average to open each application, showing excellent optimization. Although note that in the case of the exchange of applications is usually where Samsung is usually seen a little slower or inconsistency. At times you can get to see this kind of white screens that could be uncomfortable for those who are used to a super smooth experience in the exchange of applications. So definitely the RAM seems to be not as well managed as we would like, or at least the optimization of the system when swapping apps is not the most effective. But definitely the processor power is very good. In this case, you saw how fast it opened the applications. It really surprised me a lot. So it is a processor that will give you a very good speed to be working, in this case, in your applications. For example, let's go to a specific application and let's scroll and notice how the device does not seem to be slow at virtually any time. Although I do get to see some basic stumbling when doing these actions. But honestly, it is uncommon, as you realize the device is loading all the content in a very fast way. Let's go, for example, to another application, and again you realize that the performance is super smooth. It feels a very responsive device in this regard. Even when we are sliding in this part, feels super well. Let's go now to another application simply to see the performance that can get to have. And again, I confirm that it is a device that its processor will work extremely well in this type of tasks. It has 8 GB of RAM, and possibly this is its weak point, since being Samsung, probably the optimal performance will be with 12 GB of RAM, because despite having RAM Plus with another 8 virtual gigabytes, in reality you saw that the RAM does not seem to be so well used, or at least it seems that the system transitions are not the best. But this may possibly be noticed by the most demanding users, since less demanding users may not notice this little stumble when switching between one application and another. I just tell you this because I have tested other devices that when switching between one application and another seem to go a little smoother, or at least do not seem to restart the applications at times. So the performance is definitely very good. Let's go now to test how it goes exporting a video with a total duration of 1 minute using clips recorded with this cell phone. We are going to do this export process directly here, although I must anticipate that it previously compressed the video, so that's why I guess it's gonna be a very fast time. We already have it. It took very little time, although I insist it compressed before, so this editor is possibly not yet compatible with the Samsung processor. So let's do the test again, but now using LumaFusion, which I insist is a much more professional editor, although paid. However, LumaFusion has a partnership with Samsung, so possibly their application is more optimized, but let's wait. Ready, as you can see, it took only 15 seconds, so it's lightning fast when exporting video recorded in 4K. It is definitely a very attractive option for those who are looking to edit video directly on their cell phone with a lot of speed. Let's go to the games, and for that I must tell you that it includes the Gaming Hub, which is a compilation of your games, although you could also get to play things that are not installed on your phone, in case you are a more casual gamer and just want to entertain yourself without using storage space on your phone. So they have a good catalog of this type of content, but for the most demanding there will be the option obviously to have their games installed, and in this case Samsung gives priority to a performance where the heat is more controlled. But if you are one of those users who want maximum performance, in addition to having performance optimization, you must access the labs section to enable this alternative performance management. With this, Samsung will not give so much priority to control the heat and can offer maximum performance, but in this case we will leave it as is for our test to see more or less what is the management that Samsung has by default. Here you can also configure other tools that Samsung offers you through the Game Booster, and also gives you the option to play connected to the charger without the current passing through the battery to avoid a little more heating. So if you see it necessary, you could get to play with that setting enabled. Note that when loading a game, Game Booster will appear in this navigation bar, although it could also appear in the notifications panel if you have disabled the navigation bar. Here you can enable the priority mode that will prevent some interruptions, and of course it will also block notifications and other things. You could also have the option to lock the screen while the game is downloading content to avoid excessive battery consumption. You can lock the navigation bar, take screenshots and take screen recordings, as well as directly open some applications so that you can answer your messages or similar things without the need to leave your game. In fact, you can also access plugins that you can download separately, and in this case they can give you an even better experience in some games. See the monitoring of your frames per second or something similar. Even Game Booster Plus allows you to manage performance individually for each game. It can also help you if you want to improve your frames per second experience. In Call of Duty, by default, it gives very high graphics quality at maximum frame rate, which is quite good in terms of compatibility, and even though ultra frame rate is available, you notice that the graphics quality drops, so you as a user must choose what you are going to give priority to. In this case, let's try first with the maximum quality by enabling some filter, and notice that all the effects are also available at the same time. So the processor does have an excellent graphic compatibility, and that is something that is appreciated since even the experimental functions are available. Although if you select the ultra frames per second rate with the medium quality, notice that some effects are no longer available, but most of them are still present. And in this case, we first play with the maximum rate, and the experience without screen recording is going to be good. It is not something ultra amazing because it is definitely not a gamer cell phone, and it is also a bit compact. So it may be that the heat can play against you, but you can get to play well. If you record the screen to make gameplays, the experience can get a little worse. Although in this case the screen recording looks perfectly smooth, but when playing is where you will notice that it drops in its frames or there are some hitches at times. Nothing that makes the device freezes completely, but it can be annoying for some gamers. Although I insist, in the screen recording you do not notice this, I'm telling you, but at the time of playing, yes. It is curious that the result of the recording does look totally fluid, but notice how it managed to maintain a good temperature despite the device is quite compact, although this game is still not so complex. Running this game at the ultra rate, notice that the result is very similar, although obviously you do get to notice the elevation in the frames per second. Then it can give you an even smoother experience, although when recording the screen again you may get to notice certain hitches that are not comfortable, but still maintains good stability and again still a considerably good temperature to play, although it is still not something that is still totally cool. In the Legends game, you know, we changed the automatic setting to a manual setting to set it to the highest possible graphics quality, which in this case is Ultra at 60 frames per second, although you know this game goes up to over 60 despite setting it to 60. With this, we realized that the device actually suffered a lot when it tried to go above 60 frames per second, showing quite a bit of instability and was never able to reach 120, it stayed at 117. It wouldn't go below 43 anyway, so it's not that it gives you a slow gaming experience, it's just that it's not that stable. In fact, after a while it got a little bit more stabilized at 60 frames per second, improving the experience quite a bit in terms of stability. So again, it confirms that it is a device that can give you a good gameplay, but if you are not so demanding in the gaming section. Fortunately, again the temperature stayed below 45 degrees Celsius, which is where we already consider the temperature to be too high, so the experience can still be good in this regard. Although compact devices have never really excelled in gaming due to the small amount of space they have for cooling. In the SpongeBob game, the resolution and quality are set to medium by default, but we turned it up to the highest since it's a flagship device, so we selected epic resolution, epic quality, and 60 frames per second. And in this game, specifically, it doesn't seem to have a good optimization with respect to the processor, because it does get to notice a lot slower even without recording screen, and when recording screen it's obviously going to notice a lot slower, and you can also get to notice that the screen doesn't respond quite right. So this game would definitely require a bit more optimization for this processor that doesn't look so popular among game developers. So there could also be other games with less than adequate optimization, and again, Samsung seems to be giving priority to not being so hot. So if you are one of the gamers who wants to have a super stable game, this device is definitely not going to be the one for you. And lastly, on Henshin Impact, by default it has the medium graphics quality, but we bumped it up to the highest to test the device according to its price. In fact, we also set the motion blur to very high and went up to 60 frames per second to have a super complicated test. And again, it confirms to us that this is not a device that is able to offer you supreme stability. In fact, you see constant ups and downs in the frame rate. Obviously, it doesn't drop to levels where you're already seeing a super frozen game, but it's not going to satisfy gamers who want much better stability. In fact, in this price range and in lower price ranges, yes, you could find much better stability. So it's not a gaming-focused device. And if you want to play this kind of content, the right thing to do would be to lower the graphics quality a little bit or something similar if you want to get to perfect stability. On the other hand, if you are not the most demanding, you could definitely still get to enjoy these games. Consider that in this case, the temperature still stayed below 45 degrees Celsius, although it was already much closer, confirming to us that being a compact device, it doesn't have that good cooling. Although apparently even the Galaxy S24 gave us better performance in this regard. So consider this. If you are one of those gamers who want sky-high performance, better look for another option. And with that, we have come to the end of this video review. It is definitely a device that can have several positive points, but what can bother me a lot is the little evolution that is seen with respect to the last generation. Obviously, its biggest competitor will be the Galaxy S23, which in many ways will be pretty much the same. So hopefully Samsung will gift us with a better upgrade with the Galaxy S25. At the moment, the improvements are few, and I don't know if they justify the purchase. I hope you liked this video. If you did, you know you can tell us about it, and we'll see you next time.